Very liberal CBS said that 76% of the people they polled to March said the president did an outstanding job. That's a big number. And then, even, can you imagine this? The Communist News Network, or otherwise known as what? CNN. Fake news, that's right. They did their own little poll, and guess what? Even 55% of those respondents there said President Trump did a great job. Anyway, I'm going to leave you folks tonight, just by show of hand, how many people here think that the President really did do a great job? Anybody that think he didn't do too good a job? All right, hey, unanimous. Okay, so we got our own unanimous poll. But right after, and let me tell you this. So right after I read these other polls, here's what I get from someone that sent this over me an email. All right, see if you can figure out maybe who sent this out. It says this.
Ladies and gentlemen, members and guests, welcome to the Florida February rally.
You want to make sure you're good and welcome here now.
Our program will begin in 5 minutes.
You got to do it all over again, right? Are you up for it? Now anyway, so right after we get these polls, here's what somebody sent me. And this went out to a large group of people here in our community. And it says, Trump's State of the Union did address real problems that Florida families are seeing. It was one big pander to his political base. We want to make sure that Trump is a one-term president. But if we want to win, our work has to start now. Help us hit our goal of making an early investment in our 2020 election programs. We need your help to win. Sign the Florida Democratic Party. Now, I'm hearing today that a lot of Democrats have crossed over now and they're supporting Trump. Do we have any crossover at all? Any crossover here at all? They're here. They're here. They're among our group right now. So we're going to try to identify some of these crossovers maybe next time we give that some time. Well, we've got a great program this evening, and we've got got a good program committee that I think has put something together you're going to really enjoy. We're going to get you out of here on time. But I'd like to call up first, if I could, our Vice President in charge of Sales and Marketing, Jim Volpe. Jim, would you come up? Oh, he's right over here. And so Jim wears a lot of hats on our club. He handles Sales and Marketing. He also works on the Programs Committee with our own Suzanne Days. And her and Jim and Mike Goss and Suzanne Zimmerman has done just a great job, I think, tonight in putting this program together. So Jim, thanks for all your help. Jim Volpe, everybody.
First of all, I want to thank all the volunteers. I can't mention their names. David and I have been doing this for over a year now, and boy, we have some real great volunteers coming forward. Without them, we just couldn't make it possible. And I am going to publicly apologize to our three honorable supervisors of elections. All three of them committed to come here for our January meeting, and then David ended up finding someone that had to be here in January, and they were all kind enough to change their schedules, and they're here for the February meeting. Rush Limbaugh got on the air the other day, and he came up with an interesting statistic that our three supervisors of elections followed the rules. He said, Gillum got 4 million votes or so, DeSantis got 4 million votes or so, Scott got 4 million votes or so, and Nelson got 4 million votes or so. So that was 16 million votes. Guess what? Down in Palm Beach in Broward County, they didn't have it done yet. But guess what he said? He said Powerball processed 250 million tickets, and 20 minutes after the close, they knew who had 6 tickets, who had 5 tickets, who had 4 tickets, and where they bought the tickets. But our guys didn't have that problem. Now, I have the pleasure here of introducing our first guest speaker. Jonathan Hanen is a regional field representative for American Immigration Reform of nonprofit, nonpartisan 5013C located in Washington, D.C. Jonathan, he joined FAIR in 2016 with prior experience in political consulting on local and congressional races. He also has a background in nonprofit issue advocacy, freelance journalism. Jonathan develops grassroots activist support and educates the media and the public on immigration issues. We appreciate him coming to the Villages from Washington, D.C. So everyone, please give a Villages for Trump welcome to Jonathan Hanen.
And Mr. Volpe and David G. and everyone who helped make this possible, and I want to thank all of you. So I'll just get straight down to it. We have a couple of preliminaries I got to get through. So FAIR is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit located in Washington, D.C. We've got over 2 million members. We have testified before Congress over 100 times. We have a more or less regular column in the Hill newspaper, and you may often see our President Dan Stein or our Executive Director Bob Dane talking on Fox News. We tend to support things that I'm sure this crowd mostly supports. We want to implement E-Verify. We want to have a exit entry system so we know who is coming here. We want to end chain migration. We want to lower legal immigration from its current state of 1 million a year to about 300,000 or perhaps 500,000. And of course, we want to build a wall. Illegal immigration because it really destroys the rule of law. It cheats. There's 5 million people applying here from all over the world to come here legally, and they're being cheated by all these folks. And so it just encourages more illegal immigration to not have a solid, sound immigration policy. We also, yeah, I mean, that's our basic motivation, and like I said, we'll go over the policies in a moment. So I want to get right to what's going on in Florida right now. We've got, right now, we have, my pointer will work. Oh boy. Well, there. No? Where's that? Oh, there it is. You hold down. So we have 2 immigration bills right now that are in the Florida legislature going through committee. We got an E-Verify bill that would make E-Verify law and land here in Florida. I mean, does everyone know what E-Verify is? Yeah. All right, I don't have to define it. And also, we'll talk a lot about this later. There's an anti-sanctuary bill to, there are a large number of sanctuary counties here in Florida that we will discuss in a moment. This will block the sanctuary counties that will not cooperate with ICE and will not do information sharing with illegal immigrant criminals. So what you can do is you can call your state rep and your state senator to help support E-Verify. I gave you a handout here from a group called Floridians for Immigration Enforcement. So a lot of you might have this. If not, I've got my handouts on the back table. There's a lot of pamphlets and so on. But you can call your House Speaker, Jose Oliva. You can call Bill Galvano and tell him you support these bills. You can go to fleeman.org and sign up for alerts. I also, in the back, I've got an activist engagement survey. And what that will do is if you fill that out, if you're interested in doing a constituent meeting with your state rep or your state senator to help support and verify an anti-sanctuary bill here in Florida, then we can work with you and coach you up on your talking points. And so if you fill that out, you'll know which state reps, state senators. You'll know which state reps and state senators you know, and the top 3 people to fill it out, you win a mug, and this is a magic mug. And you pour a cup of coffee in it, it will light up and say, "Build the wall, make it tall." So now back to the subject at hand. So, I mean, what is at stake in the open borders battle that we face with the progressive left versus people who want to have a nice rule-bound legal process for people to come here? Well, on the one side, we've got the U.S. Constitution, and we have Article 1, Section 8, where the power to set naturalization limits is given to Congress. And we generally believe from the Declaration of Independence that the just powers of government derive from the consent of the governed. So, as a community of Americans, we elect our representatives to then decide who our fellow citizens are going to be, where they're going to come from, under what circumstances, what skills, and things like that. On the other side, you have folks who want not just more immigrants to come here legally, which might be all right, but they want unlimited immigration to the U.S., and they think that this poem here by Emma Lazarus, the poem on the Statue of Liberty, I don't know if you can see it, give us your tired, your poor, your humble masses, you're going to breathe free. They think that is a law. I mean, I testify, I travel from Maine to Florida, and I fight sanctuary county bills, sanctuary state bills. I reach out to folks like you to build up teams of grassroots activists to come and do testimony. And wherever I go, the ACLU is busing people in, and the SEIU is busing people in, and we're all giving our testimony. And many people quote this poem, and they just think that America is just some country where anyone can come anytime under any circumstances. So, what is their goal with the open borders movement? Probably you know, a lot of them want to use that as a tool to win elections. They want to fundamentally transform America. They want to make it into somewhat like French socialism. You know, as you heard last night, you know, we'll never be a socialist country. This battle between these two visions of government, right? Your nation-state liberal democracy that you have elected representatives making your laws versus unaccountable, unelected officials like the EU executive body that's unelected and just rules by fiat regulations, right? This is the battle. It was a battle that's been around before Donald Trump. It's going to be a battle after Donald Trump. And so while we may get down into lots of details and the weeds and numbers and figures, it's important not to lose sight of this battle. So some basic facts. We got about 11 to 13 million illegal immigrants in the country according to DHS, ICE. I know Trump was quoting the Princeton study that says it's at 22, but that's the last one that DHS put out. 44 million foreign born right now, and we got about, so out of those foreign born, you got about a quarter who are illegal immigrants, and they're about 3.6 to 3.9% of the population, and that's going to be significant when you think about some of the crime figures we'll talk about. But we've averaged 1 million new legal immigrants since the year 2000. I mean, there have been years that were 800,000. Obama's final year was 1.6 million, but it averages out to 1 million a year. So it's a lot of folks, and on the legal side, so that's with an LPR status to green card, and there are other ways like qualifying for asylum or the refugee program we'll talk about, but that million is the bulk of it, and within that million, you've got about 400 of them are from chain migration. So that, and we don't know who those folks are. We don't know, they're coming pursuant to a relative who came here on a green card. So, and also, I'm not here to beat up on anyone from any country, from South American countries. 50% of our illegal immigrants on a daily basis are visa overstays, and they're about 50% of this total. So, but one thing I want to say is, I'm sure you've been called a lot of bad names for supporting sensible immigration policy. But if you look at that 1 million number, those aren't on a path to citizenship. You would have to add the next 20 countries combined to equal that 1 million. So what that tells you is America has the most generous legal immigration system there is. And if you look at guest workers around the world, we have over 200,000 folks on H-1s and H-2s and other types of visas. But if you put that all in a big bag with the rest of the world's guest workers, it's hard to compare apples to apples, but we still have 20% of the world's guest workers. So we are far and away the most generous country there is. I will get into a bunch of numbers, but as you guys all know, it's all about simple common sense moral arguments. They tend to win over all the statistics, and you always need to strike a balance between 30,000 feet up and down in the weeds. The White House, since the Saturday address by Trump, they've been sticking with this simple messaging, humanitarian and border security crisis. I've been lucky enough to be on some conference calls with some White House staff, and Mike Pence came on to talk, and then another one, Trump himself came on, and they're just trying to say keep it simple. These are some talking points that are released by the White House, and so you heard something the other night. 235,000 arrests on the border. They're criminals or have criminal convictions. You've got 30,000 sex crime, 4,000 murders. It is a humanitarian crisis. So they're going straight to the moral component. They're not even getting to the cost figures we're going to talk about. You got 60,000 crossing a month, 2,000 a day. 2/3 of them are what are called UX, unaccompanied minors, or women that have unaccompanied minors with them. A lot of them are just paid people taking kids over who aren't even related to them, but a third of the women who cross the border wind up being assaulted, and believe it or not, 15% of the men who come across the border being assaulted as well. So, you got all these folks who are apprehended southern of the border crossing illegally, unlawful entry, and they're not qualifying for asylum. So 90% of our heroin's coming through. You've heard this stuff. It is a humanitarian border crisis. And so these numbers, by the way, you'll often hear PolitiFact or CNN or other outlets saying, where's Trump getting these numbers? He's making these numbers up. But you see, these numbers are coming from different federal agencies. And those folks who are putting them out, they will have to face congressional testimony and back those numbers up. So as time goes on, we will get more of the backing for the numbers they've come out with. But do not fall for the belief that they're not solid numbers. I've talked about the rule of law and fairness to legal immigrants, but there's so many other great moral arguments. Supply and demand, right? For wages to rise, illegal immigration has to fall. We also have 1 million illegal immigrants coming here every year, but many of them go back. During Michael Barone, the pundit from American Enterprise Institute and the Washington Examiner, he pointed out that net illegal immigration across from Mexico during the Obama years was actually zero, because a lot of them came over to work, the economy was not so good, a lot of them went back. But you're getting about 1 million a year on average coming in, at least since the year 2000. And really, it's been, you don't have to be Stephen Moore or some great economist to know that it is going to crush working class wages. You've had a 6 or 7 point decline during the Obama years in the bottom quintile of wage earners. It's pretty much common sense, supply and demand, and because it's bringing in lower wage jobs, and then it's cheating the citizens and legal residents who could do the job. Now, environmentally, even maybe you have someone like our friend was saying, who's on the left, and they are perhaps a global warming person. Well, think about it this way. If you really believe that your average American has a carbon footprint 10 or 100 times that of somebody from Nicaragua or Honduras, why would you want to bring them there, add it here, and then just keep increasing the carbon footprint? We'll talk about all kinds of crime statistics, but I work a lot with angel moms and dads, people whose children have been killed by illegal immigrants who, like Kate Steinle, like Molly Tibbetts, like Sarah Ruth, like Maureen Maloney, this person served crimes, and had been deported a number of times, and coming back over a deportation order is, of course, a felony. And, imagine your son or daughter is killed by someone who is not here legally in the country. So that's a point you'll often see, for example, Tucker Carlson say when he's debating someone. He'll have his crime figures, but then he'll just say, one angel mom or dad is too many. So, like I said, we've got loads of statistics about crime here. I already gave you the ones the Trump administration had, but some of these are U.S. Bureau of Prisons, right? 21.7% of the inmates are illegal immigrants, 42,188. U.S. Marshals, 11,000 out of 50,000, that's 24%. But here's the killer. Fiscal year, 5 years here, 44% of all federal convictions went to non-citizens, right? So, and when you think of kidnappings, it's high, right? Within that stack of the 450, they get 40% of the kidnappings, drug offenses, and so on. And that is why I pointed out that illegal immigrants are 3.6 to 3.9% of the population, but 44% of all federal convictions. So costs, I'm not sure if you can see this, it's a little bit small, but basically I'll just say, before I talk about our cost study, the National Academy of Sciences has a study, you can read it. They came to the same conclusion as us, that illegal immigrants are a net loss to the federal taxpayers and a net loss to all the taxpayers in the individual states. And their number, it was much higher than our net loss of $116 billion to the nation. You may have heard, I saw Trump give a number, it was an informal talk, and he put it at over $200 billion with other ancillary costs. So, these are, you don't have to trust our numbers, but if you don't want to. But we've got $45.8 billion we calculated in total federal cost, and we're looking at 5 basic programs, law enforcement, health care, cash assistance, SNAP, things like that. And so we figured $15.4 billion are going out to illegal immigrants. So at the federal, they're paying back in taxes $15.4 billion. So that's about a third of your money back if you're a federal taxpayer. Now at the state and local level, you get $88.9 billion, but only $3.5 billion coming back in. So you're talking 5 to 6% back at the state level. So it is a big loss. Florida itself, now this is our 2017 study. I know they handed out the 2010 study, which is good, but I also have this handout, my handout. So you've got an increase, you've got about 957,000 illegal immigrants, and with all these programs, the net loss to families, this $6.29 billion figure is for both illegal immigrant programs spent on illegal immigrants and the children of illegal immigrants. And Floridians are on the hook about $851 per household. Now, I said to myself, what does this mean in a budgetary context in the state of Florida? I'm not a budget expert. So I just went on Ballotpedia, looked up some basic numbers. So this is kind of small. Let's fast forward, but total state spending in 2016, $78.3 billion. Well, 6.29, a pretty big chunk of that. Your state debt, $33.3 billion, right? 6.29, and that's a big chunk of your state debt being spent on illegal immigrants. I crunched the math. It was 14% in 2014, and 18% of the state debt of $33 billion. So you're talking about a big chunk of change is being spent on illegal immigrants here in the state of Florida. And I've got a list here, and Florida is one of the top spending states on illegal immigrants. We've got a list of all 50 states. You can download the report from our site, fairus.org. I got the summary page of it in the back for a handout. Now, I guess in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the sanctuary county debate. So I want to set the context. This is a graphic of a study of ours that appeared on Fox News, where we calculated that there's currently 564 sanctuary counties in America. Out of 3,142 counties in the 50 states plus D.C. Now, who knows what? Raise your hand if you know what a 287G ICE detainer is. Okay, so what makes a sanctuary county is that they will not honor, there's 2 things. They won't share any kind of information. Any public employee cannot share the status of an illegal immigrant with the federal government, but they will not, the law enforcement in those counties will not honor an ICE detainer warrant. So ICE, when a person is lawfully arrested and booked, or when a person serves a crime, serves their sentence, it will generate, they'll be pressed through the NCIC database and other criminal databases. It will set off a trigger warning at ICE. ICE will send in a warrant saying, hold this person for 48 hours. And we will come and pick them up, right? And then that's the safest way to pick up an illegal immigrant, right? When they're in custody. But this The 287G ice detainer is called 287G because it pertains to the 1996 federal law that Bill Clinton signed, the IRA law, and that law was designed as a force multiplier because ICE, when Trump came in, they had about 2,000 ICE agents across the country. You could ever pick up an illegal immigrant criminal, and Trump has increased that number quite a bit, but they're overwhelmed. They don't have enough support, and so they need to get help from local law enforcement. And so Bill Clinton's law says that any law enforcement officer, federal, state, local, can get free ICE training to honor an ICE detainer warrant. Well, these folks, and we'll talk about it, we'll go on to talk about Florida in a sec, but these counties, it blew up, as you can see. It was okay during Clinton and Bush, but it blew up during the Obama years, and then the resistance movement is going around pushing these welcoming resolutions you may have heard of, and that are getting county councils across the country to say, no, do not honor these ICE detainer warrants, and that winds up tying the hands of a lot of sheriffs. And so that is how Sarah Root was killed in Douglas County, Nebraska. She's a 21-year-old woman. She finished college. She had a 4.0 GPA. And one day later, she's run over and killed by an illegal immigrant named Edwin Mejia. Mejia had been deported a couple of times and served a couple of crimes, but Douglas County, Nebraska is a sanctuary county. So here we are, Florida. These are your sanctuary counties. Happily, I don't see Sumter on the list. So I'll send this around to Mike, and you can get a copy of it from Mike. But we have a report. We have a report on all 564 sanctuary jurisdictions and why, to prove that they are, and that's downloadable on our site at veryus.org. Now let's talk about some good news, though. Florida is different than any other state in the union because they have 17 sheriffs that have a consortium with a basic ordering agreement to honor these ICE detainers. And so if you know Tom Homan, you may have seen him on TV, Big Head. He is saying how great this is because it will just allow ICE to do its job and keep people safe. And so the good, these are the 17 good counties here in Florida that are in this consortium. And then you've got, now there's also a special 287G program that 5 counties in Florida have, and that is where you get a special training from ICE, a special liaison. They train up all your law enforcement, and you're in touch with the local director, and you can get it done right. There's about 50 of them in the country now. There were 20 when Obama came in. He put in a fiat executive order to block the creation of 287G county programs. Trump lifted it, now we're up to mid-50s. And, if you think about it, it is very, very unfair to law enforcement. I've seen Mr. Hanen make this point. When you're a law enforcement officer, you take an oath. You don't just take an oath to, Clay County, right? Or the state of Florida. You take an oath to uphold all the laws in the country, of which one is the 1996 law Bill Clinton signed to allow honoring ICE detainers. So you're telling law enforcement, here's one law, and then you're telling them you cannot enforce it. So there are folks that consider, or some pundits have said, that this sanctuary county movement it's one of the greatest widespread acts of nullification of federal law in our country's history. I'll just say quickly, we'll talk about refugee. I'm moving on to question how many refugees there are in Florida. We'll talk about that a bit later, but it was a 1980 law created by, guess who? Ted Kennedy and Joe Biden. Big spike in the 200,000 here. That was Carter's last year. Went down a little bit after that somehow, and you know, Obama was cranking it up in the last year, trying to get to 200,000. But Trump's got, he had the cap down last year at 50,000, and he's got the cap down at 35,000. And we'll talk about refugees in a moment. But it's good to have it if you can vet them and if you can know who they are. But we can't really do that because, you know, the UN starts the vetting process, and they go through. I don't trust the UN to vet the criminals, but but you know, they go through DHS, they go through state, and so if you had a more rigorous vetting process, I think it would be all right. But we're going to talk more about that later. 188 refugee arrivals in Florida. You can't see this, but since October 1st to January 31st. There was about 7,161 across the country. 188 came to Florida. And now, it's a 2-year process, but, you know, James Clapper testified, they can only keep track of where they are for the first 3 months. So they move all around the country. So and, you know, primarily, you know, you're talking China, Africa, Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq. Okay, we'll cut to questions then. The mic. There you go, kind of stuff here. Yeah, so I will do 5 minutes of questions because we got to move on to the panel.
Okay, so Jonathan's going to take questions. We have one mic, so anyone have a question for him?
Yeah, I can say this. More of a question than like called illegal immigrants. They're not immigrants. Why don't we get down to a name that actually fits what's going on? They're not immigrants.
Sorry, I repeat the question. I can't hear you.
I was just asking, why do we call it illegal immigrants? They're not immigrants. They have to be identified in a different way.
Well, so, if you look in all kinds of statute law from America, as well as all kinds of court cases and settlements and so on, the term illegal alien is the term that the federal government uses. I use it all the time, really, especially when I'm testifying before county councils, because it really triggers the progressive county folks. But well said.
2 quick questions. One, when these people come in, why don't we register? We do this horrible thing to American citizens. Sexual offenders who are registered, and some deserve it for public safety. Some have done their crimes 30 or 40 years ago and still must register. So if we can do this to American citizens, why can't we register these people and put them on a public registry, know where they are, and if they don't show up, they can board and they don't get another chance to have a hearing or asylum. And then on the anti-sanctuary level, if we pass this in Florida, does that knock out all the counties? Does that overrule the counties?
It will.
Can we eventually do that on a federal level?
Yeah, well, that would be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Yeah. So yes, if this bill passes in Florida, it will take care of those sanctuary counties. Although you will need a strong enforcement mechanism, which will involve the Attorney General.
Register.
Well, they are, so all those folks are, in a sense, registered. If you are a refugee, you are on an LPR path to citizenship, you will get, I don't know what happened there, but you will get your green card and become a citizen, and so you are registered, but people do not know where they are. If you remember in 2016, about 26 governors led by Chris Christie, they were suing the Obama administration saying, we're in charge of the public safety of our people in the state. You are bringing in these people from foreign country. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they've done. You have to tell us where they are, where you're putting them. And they were not able to quite win that case in time. And so, you know, these folks tend to concentrate in different communities, wherever it might be, Lewiston, Maine, Dearborn, Michigan, and so on. So but they are on the path of citizenship, and they are going to do chain migration, and that can be problem sometimes with the vetting, because if you remember in New York, last year. You had a guy that ran on the sidewalk in his car and killed 8 people and a bunch of others. Well, I think it was a double whammy because I think the father or someone was brought in on the refugee program and pulled this guy in through chain migration. So the vetting needs to be better. And we'll talk about asylum later. Go ahead.
I'm from California. I lived out in California all my life until I came to Florida. My friends and business acquaintances say that California is lost. They have overrun by illegal immigrants. They've taken over all the towns, made shitholes out of all of them. And it's terrible. They don't even think they can elect a Republican candidate anymore because there's so many illegal voting for the Democratic candidates. And my question is to you, why is it that our government can't step in and take over the sanctuary cities? They're illegal as hell.
So there was talk in the 2016 election about prosecuting them, and there was an idea that Jeff Sessions might do it. They did not quite come through on that. But there was also the election promise of cutting certain funding to sanctuary cities and counties, which are specifically targeted narrow Department of Justice grants, like the SCAP grant, the Burn JAG grant, and others that they'll pay when you comply with the 1996 law and honor those ICE detainers. You get this funding to house and transport, feed, etc. these illegal immigrants, and then a lot of counties, if they don't spend all that money, they get to keep it. So it did have one. So first of all, threatening to cut it is a very strong threat because a small county, $50,000 or $100,000 can be a budget buster. But one of the most famous cases was right here in Florida, where Miami-Dade reversed its sanctuary county policy under the threat of it. But then you get places like Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco. They pre-sued, and they said you can't cut our funding. And you see, those cities will not honor a 287G standard, but they claim to be compliant with the law. And the reason is a very subtle reason that a 287G standard is a federal civil warrant. And they say, well, we'll honor a warrant if it's a judicial warrant here in the state. And so then they can try to get their funding. But of course, there is no way ICE is going to have the time to go get the judicial warrant in time, and the criminal's going to be long gone. So how to fight it in California, we'll be talking about some of the ballot issues there. I mean, it's there. I don't have a good answer for you on that question.
Okay, I think that last question was a good segue for me. It makes me very suspicious when I hear and look at what the Supreme Court is looking at, the cases they're looking at. To me, sanctuary cities is a violation, and maybe I'm wrong, of federal law. Is it or isn't it? And why shouldn't it be taken to the Supreme Court? Because to me, it's one of the most important things we have to decide. Why isn't the Supreme Court issue?
So the reason they're able to get away with it is because you cannot force any state to pay for the implementation of any federal law. So the sanctuary counties will say, well, we're just not going to pay to, house these criminals, or we're not going to have our law enforcement going out and handling them, and this is a matter for ICE. So that is the way that they are able to circumvent the law. It's a really, obviously you've got federal supremacy of federal laws over local laws, but this is one where you're really on that boundary line where federalism kind of meets states' rights.
So it's different than robbing a bank or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, apparently, yeah. What Congress needs to do is just restate and strengthen the 1996 law to make it clear that, this is a battle that needs to be fought at the local level, and that's why I started with that, handout, which you've got to get, it's been making its way around from Floridians for Immigration Enforcement, because E-Verify, it's never going to make it through Congress, right? But you can get it done in the states. So like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia have it, Arkansas, Tennessee, and we did a study. 15 states implemented some form of their own E-Verify bill in around through 2012 to 2015, and in 12 out of those 15 cases, unemployment went down, right? Which proves that Americans will do those jobs if given at a fair wage. So, but the anti-sanctuary bill here would really shake up the national discussion if that bill gets passed here in Florida. And so I'm inviting you to join me, fill out that form, get my card, win a mug, and we will work together to try to, we have an action alert, you can make calls, you can send emails, we'll send it out digitally, it'll give you, pop in your name and address, it'll give you your state rep, your state senator, you can get that email in there, you can make that call, and then, if you wish, you can work with me, we can work on your testimony, and you can do your constituent meeting, and I think we have a real opportunity to get E-Verify and the anti-sanctuary bill passed here in Florida. I've been meeting with numerous groups across the state. I just met with all 3 chapters of the Palm Beach County Tea Party. I met with the Tampa 912. I've met with the Fort Lauderdale Tea Party. I met with the Lake County Tea Party. We can win here in Florida. Palm Beach Trump Club is, you guys are huge, but apparently they've got like 4,500 members too, so we can do it if we work together.
Thank you, Jonathan. He's not going anywhere. We're going to be able to ask him questions. You're going to come back. Sure. We're going to give you a seat over here until it's time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Suzanne Days. I'm the chairwoman for programs for the Villages for Trump. And before I introduce the moderator for our next segment, I want to let you know we're going to be passing a bucket, 2 buckets probably. And it's for donations to help defray the cost for the club. So be as generous as possible. We do spend a lot of money on supplies and things, and we do not get the hall for free because not everybody is a village resident, so we pay for the hall as well. We will also announce the 50-50. I know those of you who bought tickets will be interested in that at 8:45, so don't go anywhere. Now it's my great privilege to introduce my new friend, Mike Goss. Mike is a retired Navy captain and former Navy intelligence officer. He is also a senior executive who served 24 years with the Central Intelligence Agency, that's the CIA, in multiple roles. As some of you know, Mike also provides educational presentations on political Islam, and I happen to see one of them, and they're amazing. He provides those to church groups, social clubs, and many other organizations that are interested in learning about this part of Islam. He's an expert on the topic, and for those of you who don't know, political Islam is the non-religious part of Islam and impacts non-Muslims. Mike and his wife Brenda moved to the Villages in 2011, and without further ado, let me give the mic to Mike.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good evening, everyone. I just want to give you a little overview in terms of how we'll operate the panel so you know what to expect. I'll introduce the 3 of our supervisors that we appreciate them coming today. Respectfully. Each supervisor will get 5-6 minutes, whatever they wish, to talk about their operations, pretty much related to the theme, whatever the supervisors care to do. And then afterwards, I'll conduct about a 20-minute panel. And then after that, we'll open it up for audience questions. So you need to be thinking throughout the panel what question you might want to ask. We'll have a lot of questions, and we have the expertise here to handle that. Each of the supervisors, I actually prefer that I address them by their first name versus their title. So that's what I'll do. The first supervisor I'll introduce is Alan Hayes. Alan is a dentist by profession, a Florida Gator, class of 76, dentist. Worked as a dentist for many years and sold the practice. He ran for the Florida House in 2004, served 3 terms. Ran for the state Senate, served 3 terms, so that's a pretty illustrious career of service. And then ran for his current position, Supervisor Elections, in 2016. He joins us today. So thank you and welcome Supervisor Hayes from Lake County. Next person I'd like to introduce is Wesley Wilcox from Marion County, first elected in 2012, re-elected in August 2016. Wesley's earned various professional certifications in his field. His background is computer science, so he's a technical bent in terms of voting. Plays a key role in the Florida State Association of Supervisors of Elections. He's the current secretary, and also is now serving the 2nd term of the Board of Directors. Attends Blessed Trinity Catholic Church. Welcome and thank you, Supervisor Wilcox. Supervisor Bill Keene, Sumter County. Supervisor Keene, here we go. You're a business leader, civic leader, typically in leadership roles. President, Sumter County Chamber of Commerce. Chairman, Sumter County Industrial Development Authority. We're seeing the theme here, right? Owner of Sales Corporation of Florida, member of the Heritage Community Church, and he was elected Supervisor of Elections in Sumter 2016. Welcome and thank you, Bill Keene. What I'd like to do is ask for, actually, Jonathan, why don't you join us up here on the stage? And then, well, maybe just go from left to right. So, Alan, if you could kick it off, 5 minutes, whatever you wish, and talk about us. And the floor is yours.
Okay, be glad to.
Go ahead.
Use this one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anything that doesn't have teeth in it, I'm not supposed to know anything about it. No, thank you thank you enough for caring enough to come out on a Thursday night to try to make this country better. Thank you for speaking out while you're interacting with people all day long. I have said many times, and most of you that have heard me before have heard me say it, and I fully believe it with every ounce of my being. The single most dangerous disease that is prevalent in America today is not cancer, it's not heart disease, it's political correctness. And until we stamp out that other disease, our country is going to continue to go down the toilet. We got to stop it. That's all there is to it. I am so sick and tired of PC police. I won't tell you in mixed company what I do to them. Need backup. Oh yeah, I got some backup too, right here in this room. Seriously, and I was very serious about what I said there too, but it is truly a privilege for me to enjoy going to work every day as a supervisor of elections there in Lake County. We undertook a very large task to consolidate our operation. When I was sworn in January 2017, we had an administrative center in the basement of a downtown building, and we had our warehouse 8 miles away in Mount Dora. And we consolidated all of that operation in one new facility out on US 441. I say new facility, it was a building that had been vacant for about a year and a half. And we moved in and took it over and reconditioned it and made it adaptable to our purpose so that we now have a very secure building with 18 cameras inside it, all sorts of alarms and everything everywhere. And every ballot that comes into that building is under 24 hours camera surveillance from the day it comes in until the day it goes into the shredder 24 months later. That's the security that we have there in our new facility. Lake County had what I would consider an uneventful election in 2018. I, as a rookie, recognized very early that there was a whole lot of things about elections that I didn't know. And all of you that are in leadership positions or have been in leadership positions know that to be successful as a leader, you need to surround yourself with people that are very capable and then empower them to do what they do best. You need to recognize and admit that you don't know everything, and you need to find out somebody that does know everything, and that's why I lean on Wesley Wilcox. I've got a wore-out telephone line between Tavares and Ocala. I'm telling you the truth, folks. Not one time has this man failed to respond. He either answers the phone or he calls me right back. And Wesley, I publicly say thank you, as I've said it privately. You are responsible. It's truly my privilege to belong to the Florida Association of Supervisors of Elections. There's only 67 of us in the state. That's because we only have 67 counties. But
I wish we could kick a couple out. That's really great for me to say we could build that wall a little South Florida.
See why we get along so well? But literally, I leaned on those guys, and they made me look awfully good. And truly, the election workers in Lake County, my predecessor had been in that position literally for 44 years as an elected supervisor. And prior to that, she had worked in the office for 14 years. So there's a 58-year tenure that was broken when she chose not to run for re-election. The people elected me. I came in and recognized the talent that was on that team and empowered them to just blossom where they were. And they have come through magnificently. We had a lot of, we had probably 12 or 1,300 poll workers, many of whom had been at it for 20 or 30 years. And many had told me on the campaign trail, when she leaves, I'm leaving because I'm too old to do it anymore. But those who remained embraced the new technology. When I came in, Lake County was still in the 2016 election. You walked in and you had to find your name on the sheet of paper on that book, and then you signed that little sheet of paper. And it was the same old technology they were using in the 1800s. And so last year, we threw them all in the trash can, and we went countywide with electronic poll books. And you come in and you just swipe your driver's license or other identification card, and you get your ballot and you go vote. We went to ballot on demand for our early voting facilities. And those poll workers embraced those changes and made it very successful for us. So, yes, I'm the big cheese, but they're the ones that made me look good. And my team, my professionals there in that office made me look very good too. We have 238,000 registered voters. We had 157,000 that voted in the 2018 election, which was about a 66.22%. And it went very smoothly. We were counting on probably having one recount. So we had a plan already in place. When the recount order came out with 3, we simply worked our plan. And fortunately, all 3 of those races were on the front page of our ballot, which was a 2-page ballot. And we got people to come in on Saturday and Sunday, separating the pages of the ballot so that when we began the recount with the machines on Monday, all we had to do was just run that one page through. And we just worked the whole thing right through there. I wish that plan had been my brainchild, but it wasn't. It was Wesley's brainchild. It's called run and rinse and repeat. Run, rinse, and repeat. But that's the kind of camaraderie that we have for the most part in that association, and the kind of support that I got. And forgive my selfishness, but young man, I like your cap. It says U.S. Coast Guard. How many others of you coasties in here? All right, so there's a grand total of 3 of us in here. Yeah. Go Coast Guard.
Just give it right to Wesley, if you would. Pass the mic, so to speak.
As Alan mentioned, my name is Wesley Wilcox. I'm going to be very short. I am short, so anyway, I'm going to stay kind of short. Echo a lot of the things that Alan said. the vast majority of us, especially here in Central Florida, we share a lot of ideas. There's not any one of us that's the smartest guy in the room, so we lean on each other quite heavily for ideas and expertise throughout that. This is my 29th year conducting elections someplace, so the experience Alan has inside the head. I'm pleased to have been the supervisor now for, this is my, I think I just completed 6 years into my 7th year as supervisor. Very pleased and proud to be the supervisor for Marion County. And since I know we're not in Marion County, how many people from Marion County in here? Y'all keep your hands up, so when I start talking later, I want to talk to you guys, because I'm up for re-election in 2020. Just saying.
Thank you, Wesley. I pretty much echo what Alan said. I'm a newbie as well. I've reached out to Wesley on numerous occasions. I come from a business background, so pretty much when I was elected, I pretty much turned the office upside down and rebuilt it from the bottom up. All the way, every aspect of the office. No decisions is made in my office without security being talked about. It's talked about every single day at our office. I don't think that's going to go away. I think it's something that's front and center. Wesley and I talk about it, and Mr. Hayes on a regular basis. We have probably 400 poll workers. Who all's here from Sumter? Oh yeah, thank you.
Everybody else. Oh, all 6 of us.
Yeah. Was anyone there for the recount down in our Bushland? All right, that went extremely smooth. We had a tremendous amount of people showing up, which was unheard of for Sumter County. We actually had to break them into 2 rooms. We went through 74,000 ballots that went through DS200s to got some express votes for ADA. The 850s for vote mail, we ran them all the way back through, and the number matched exactly the same. So the integrity of the system right there. We did recount. It has sold me our seal protocol. I think is second to none. I'm just honored to be your supervisor of elections, and I look to serve for many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Very interesting. I'll start the panel discussion off, but I want to ask the audience a question. How many people have heard of the term ballot harvesting? Raise your hand, please. That's about half. Ballot harvesting. Okay. This question is for Jonathan, our expert from D.C. Jonathan, what is ballot harvesting? What was its impact on the 2018 congressional elections? And what are the prospects for ballot harvesting being spread to the other states, including Florida?
Hello. Yes, so ballot harvesting is, can you hear? Yeah. Ballot harvesting is a process, it's a law in California. You can go out, third parties, political operatives and other volunteers, they can go collect mail-in ballots, and you fill out your mail-in ballot, they can collect it and submit it. And in the context of California, they mail every registered voter a ballot, so you can go out, and there's a lot of room for fraud. Of course, you could harvest someone's ballot, let's say, from a party, Democrat or Republican, whichever you don't like, and then you might wind up tossing them, or you might, be helping people to fill them out or otherwise coercing them. It's suspected that there were a number of races in California where the Republicans were ahead by 8 of them, I believe, and they wound up losing all 8, and that is because ballots keep coming in, the mail-in ballots keep coming in, and then it overturned all those results. And the one thing I will say about it is the part of it is the Republicans' fault. They were not out running an aggressive ballot harvesting program, whereas the Democrats were, and so that probably would have saved a lot of those seats. But it's very interesting because in North Carolina, the Democrats are all up in arms because they have a limited ballot harvesting situation there where family members and close relatives can do ballot harvesting. And so there was a lot of monkey business apparently on the Republican side there in North Carolina. So now the Democrats are all up in arms saying, no, we can't have velvet harvesting in North Carolina. But we've got, they're pushing it in Ohio, and so I think that it is going to continue. They are going to continue to try to spread that because they're always pushing universal voter registration. You saw that in the last 2016 cycle. Both Hillary and Bernie were pushing for just universal automatic registration when you turn 18. So it's going to be an issue, and our side is going to have to fight to compete for harvesting ballots.
Supervisors, any observations in ballot harvest in your respective counties at all? Nothing. Right.
Well, one of the difficulties in California was that they register illegal immigrants to vote, and they made it clear that so when you get a driver's license, it puts you through motor voter, which registers you to vote. And California made it clear back in April 16th, that they were not going to check anymore, and so it was estimated, what was it, 23,000 or something voted.
The takeaway point there is I think there are 8 Republican congressional seats. There was a Republican column on election eve, and within 2 weeks, poof, they're all turned blue. 8 seats. That's huge. That's something we should probably think about pursuing in more detail in the club at some point. Question for the supervisors. Just so you know, I got a lot of help and inputs from people. Ask this question, ask that question. Nobody was shy about giving input. So we've heard several reports. I can't vouch, but I'm going to just ask the question, let you guys take a shot at it. We've heard several reports about voting fraud issues in some local nursing homes. The point is that basically ballots would be sent to residents, sometimes being by definition mentally impaired, and their ballots would be filled in by staff or something, and they were basically altered. Have you heard anything at all about that? Any of your counties? Have you heard any rumors whatsoever or what?
Yes.
I personally have not heard any rumors concerning that. I know my office, we actually contact the assisted living facilities, and we go to them with my personnel.
Sumter does that as well.
Okay.
And another factor, we take people from both parties with us to go. It's not just somebody from my office that does that assisted voting. We take a Republican and a Democrat to those assisted living facilities.
Okay, thank you. That was a great answer. That's another question, and again, I turn to the 4 experts to the left here. The notion of overt voter fraud, you touched on some of the stats, but there have been reports, I don't know how true they are, but in some precincts the number of ballots cast basically exceeded the number of registered voters. Have you heard any?
That doesn't happen in Marion County.
None of our 3 counties. All right, we're shooting down these inputs one by one. That's good, though. Let me just turn it back to Jonathan for a bit. And you covered a lot of information in your excellent presentation. I wanted to ask you, though, from the perspective of FAIR, a national organization. I was very impressed when I visited, by the way, about 50, 60 people at least. It was a full first-class operation. What would you say, simplified for all of us, what are the 3 most important actions people in this room can take to reduce the impact of illegal immigration on our voting system? What can we do?
Well, I would say that probably the 3 most important things to get done, one of them is, I think, already underway, and that is getting the citizenship question back on the census. On the census every year since 1900. Barack Obama got it taken off for 2010. Trump's working to put it on in 2020. It's being held up in the courts, but I think will prevail. And if you think about it, the census and the system of proportional representation and how many representatives you get, it's based on not the number of citizens, but the total population of all residents in your state. And so a lot of pundits think that New York California, and yes, Florida, that adds up to about 15 or 16 extra representatives, which of course correlates exactly with getting 15 or 16 extra electoral votes in the Electoral College. So that is something that, that has you've got to keep that citizenship question on there. So I could say you just call it, you got to call your U.S. reps and your U.S. senators and tell them you support that. There are states that do have a lot of good voter ID laws, and trying to get some of those where you have to have at least a photo ID of some sort. That would, I think, cut down on it. There are a lot of states that have mandatory 2-year purgings. You might remember, I believe it was 2012, or leading in 2011, Eric Holder in the Obama Justice Department, they sued about 5 states that were going to do their mandatory purging, and lo and behold, it was, Ohio and North Carolina or other, Florida. It was all the swing states basically that were in play. So trying to support, I guess it would be your state secretary of state in those purgings. I asked someone, I asked a famous pundit, you might know John Fund from National Review. He's an expert on voter fraud, along with Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. So I asked John, I said, what is the best thing we can do about voter fraud in general, but illegal alien voter fraud? And he said an interesting thing. He said it's kind of like when you go shopping, right? You go to a mall and there's a security camera, and maybe the camera's not even turned on, and there's a security guard. Maybe he's asleep, and there's a sign on the wall saying shoplifters will be prosecuted. So his point was that having those mechanisms in place for rigorous processes and being able to prosecute voter fraud, and just the threat of it and making it known that you can be prosecuted will be a great deterrent. But that is about what I've got to say.
Okay, that's good. Census purge rolls and prosecute. That's what I heard you say. The next topic, and I'd like to direct this towards our 3 supervisors, relates to the overall topic of non-citizens registering to vote. Now, the Texas Attorney General just recently completed an investigation. It was in the news a couple of weeks ago. The Texas AG said, or estimated, 95,000 non-citizens were registered in the state of Texas. This is just a couple weeks ago. 95,000 non-citizens registered in the state of Texas, and of those, 58,000 voted. That's enough to swing the state, 2020. There was another study, I think it was Pennsylvania, last week, 11,000 people registered to vote that were non-citizens. So here's my question for the 3 supervisors. Are you aware of any ongoing investigations in the state of Florida to check out a similar question in our state?
Yes, I am. Actually, there's a state bill that's being put out there right now by, how do you say his name, Gruder? Joe Gruder. State Bill, Senate Bill 230. And what it does is, and it kind of tags into one of your other comments and questions, is kind of a jury duty, clerk of the court.
Yes,
one of the questions the clerk of the court asks you when you go to serve on jury duty is, are you a U.S. citizen? That's one of the ways people get out of serving on jury duty. They'll say no. Well, the clerk of the court in Marion County is a friend of mine. And so I realized they were doing this collection of data. And so if you answer no to my clerk of the court, he provides me that data. And if you're a registered voter in Marion County, or if you were a registered voter in Marion County, I'm about to send you a letter and basically tell you that, hey, you either lied to him or you lied to me. But one of the two of us, you're going to have to come straight on. But Senator Gruder's bill is going to make that, and I think you guys do that as well with your clerks, is going to make that a law in the state that all clerk of the courts, we have that process. The other process is, has anybody in here gone to the driver's license office lately, tax collector, and got your driver's license with real ID, and you're real ID compliant? You had to bring your kindergarten teacher, your mother, the guy who married you, 8 other people to prove that. Well, so let me ask you, so if you prove this, and you prove that you're real ID compliant, that you're a U.S. citizen, don't you think that should be some data that the driver's license office shares with the supervisor? Because if you don't make the match, don't you think it's important that I know that? Okay. That's the other part of this bill that we're going to come back in. And if we can do those two things, and there's a couple other programs that we're out doing. First off, the clerk of the court data is great data, but once we have that other piece or part of it, I think the possibility of anything that happened like in Texas greatly reduces here in the state of Florida.
Okay, Supervisor Keene or Hayes, any question points? Ditto. Okay, ditto. That's good. The fact that the two agencies of government are talking to each other, that's progress for sure. I haven't been in those organizations. That doesn't always happen. Here's my question. Given that the Texas AG did an investigation and found 95,000 non-citizens registered, do you think it would be advisable for the newly elected Attorney General of Florida, Ashley Moody, to initiate a similar investigation? Perhaps Villagers for Trump can send Attorney General Moody a letter recommending that. Okay, most action is local when it comes to voting, so you guys get most of the questions, right? So I never have totally understood this, and I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room. Could one of you guys, or all three of you guys, if you want to do it, explain provisional ballots specifically? What is a provisional ballot? Who typically casts a provisional ballot? When are they counted? And how many provisional ballots were cast in your counties?
A provisional ballot is cast in the state of Florida when we at the elections office, either being at a polling place, an early voting site, any of our institutions, we cannot affirm eligibility. Meaning, you come into the polling place and you tell me you're eligible to vote here, but I can't prove that you're eligible. Either
so I'm claiming that I'm registered.
You're claiming you're registered. I can't find you on my registration.
But I'm not on the rolls.
Right. Or that's one of the scenarios. Okay. The second most likely is one of the items that the gentleman mentioned earlier about ensuring integrity in elections is photo and signature ID. And so if you show up at one of our polling places and you don't have photo and signature ID, we will offer you a provisional ballot. And you can vote that provisional ballot, and then we'll validate that signature on the back end.
Even if I'm not on the registration roll? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, well, you could not be on the registration roll, but in your head, the issue with provisional ballots, it's I can't at that exact point in time absolutely confirm you're eligible or not eligible. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
And then I'm going to give you 2 days to you and to me prove that you're eligible. And if during that 2 days you can't prove it, we will never open this envelope nor count that ballot.
Do I have to prove that I registered on time?
Yes, you do.
Can you basically tell me if I'm telling the truth or not? Yeah. If I say I registered and I didn't, you can figure that in your database, right?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah, and also, one of the other areas, because we have a great relationship with our tax collector, I say our nice tax collector, but sometimes they make errors.
Okay.
And we had a couple of those. We went back and went to Randy's office, sat down, and we showed where they did not push the information to us. So it's not right for us not to let their vote count.
Fair enough.
So we had a couple of those scenarios.
Okay.
There's another very important point, and it's called security of your election workers. Many of the election workers are elderly people who deserve to be treated with courtesy, and rather than them donning a law enforcement cap and getting in the face of some ugly, irate person who says, by golly, I was registered. Sir, just fill this out. We'll give you a ballot, and we'll let the canvassing board decide whether or not your vote will be counted. And like they said, you have 2 days after the election to bring us the proof. That's all it takes. And so rather than create a big scene, sure, let's keep everybody calm down and get it done.
How many provisional ballots were counted in Lake County last year? Or any, I don't want to put you in the spot, but how many? If we're talking a couple, handful, thousands, or?
I had 147 cast.
147 provisional ballots.
33 were from eligible people. You know, one of the other 33 were actually eligible.
Less than 1/3.
That's correct.
Were truthful.
That's
or
correct.
actual, or both. Or both. I'm not saying you're lying, but I'm saying
truthful. I mean,
or both.
Right. You know, you have people. If you've ever dealt with the public, you have a subsection of people that their mind may work a little bit different than ours. If you know what I'm saying. Okay? Alright? So not all of them believe the same way. You know, they walk around with a little tin hat. You know, a tin hat, if you wear that thing, it'll block you from all satellites and the NSA can't see you or nothing.
So what I'm hearing is that provisional ballots are not a particularly big problem in any of our counties.
No, we had 11.
11? Okay.
Yeah, 4 were accepted. One was a DMV. The other was they brought their evidence.
Okay.
And we had 7
provisional ballots. That sounds reasonable. Okay. All right, let's see here. One question is military absentee votes. Can each of you guys just talk in a general sense, what are we doing to ensure that absentee ballots sent in from our troops overseas are counted? How does that work? Timelines, whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Wesley?
You start dealing with the absentee in the military. We start 45 days prior to the election. UOCAVA. Sorry, I went blank.
Okay.
The program is called UOCAVA. That's UOCAVA. Uniform Overseas Civilian Absentee Voting Act.
Okay.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
So we start mailing. That's a federal law that we start mailing at least 45 days prior to the election.
Okay.
And anybody that's registered as military overseas or military dependent will start mailing those ballots out.
Right.
Or civilian overseas. And they have the entire 45 days going out, as well as in federal elections, they have an additional 10 days on the back end. As long as they voted it and dated it by election day, they've got the additional 10 days. So they really have about a 60-day process.
Okay.
And also our military or anybody overseas, we can deliver that ballot to them via electronic. You know, we can send it via an email, but they must return it back to us either snail mail or by fax.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other comments from you guys? Fair enough. Right. Just different viewpoints. So I'm going to flip.
Are they all counted? Are the veterans all counted?
If we go through the same process, the question is, are they all counted?
Yes.
If the requirements on any of the vote by mail are met, they're counted. Meaning, did the voter, because when I mail it out to either stateside or overseas or however it is, I'm mailing you an envelope. It has your name on it. And you must sign that envelope. And when that envelope comes back to me, I know whose it was. I look up your voter registration system, and if you signed it and the signature matches what I have on file, yes, it's opened and counted right then and there. As soon as we get them back, we start processing 2 weeks before the election.
Do you ever get a ton of them back after the election's over? I mean, mail from foreign
We only
countries.
received 3 past the 10-day.
All right, we'll get to Q&A a little bit. So let's see what else we got here. Wait a minute, we're going to wait. Go ahead, ask it. I don't want to.
All right, if you receive it after the election and there is some sort of tie or whatever, how is that counted? It's not counted because when it's declared.
Right. Let me clarify 2 points real quick. If it's stateside, meaning it got mail from Alabama and Georgia or Texas, must be in our office 7 p.m. election night. Period. That's it. Okay? There's no day after, you dated later. It must be in our office. The 10-day rule only applies to overseas. Somebody that we mailed a ballot to Afghanistan or serving over there, in Europe, some overseas area. That military or civilian who's stationed overseas has 10 days after the election. So if the election was November 6th, they have up until 10 days to return that ballot. They must have voted it by election day. Date it on November 6th or sooner, but they've got that additional 10-day delivery time. And then on that 10th day, it's a Friday, we open those up and add them into our vote by mail tokens.
Why don't you mail it 10 days earlier?
We start at 45 days prior to the election. The question is, why don't we just mail 10 days earlier? Well, the thing of it is, the ones that we've mailed 45 days before the election, meaning somebody's requested it from us, usually all of those are back. It's the person who 1 week before the election decided, oh yeah, I need a ballot, let me call and send them an email. We mailed it, 6 days before the election. Most of those that we mailed, and by most I'm saying 99% of those that we mail at the 45-day limit, they're back to us in plenty of time. It's usually those last minute, I just now remembered it's election day, they get back to us 10 days after.
Okay, hang on 1 second. We're going to get to the Q&A in 1 second. Just the last question. I want to get this asked, and we'll open it up to the audience Q&A. Late voters after the polls close. Somebody wanted me to ask this question. So, voting hour deadlines are clearly posted, yet in some cases people show up late. So how much of a problem is that? How do you handle that? You might give it to Bill.
They're at the poll. If they're in the polls by 7, the deputy clerk will go out and stand behind that person.
Okay.
And no one else is allowed unless the governor or the secretary of state orders to extend the voting time.
So that sounds like a pretty straightforward process. 7 o'clock, boom, that's it. So not really a problem typically for you guys? Okay. Let's open it up to the audience. And we have mics. This is the mic I'm using. So where's Rick with... Check.
How can a canvassing board determine if a voter using a provisional ballot has not already cast a vote elsewhere in the state, and in the general election has not already cast a vote in another state?
Tough question. We have a VR system which connects all the counties together. It's a big question we have. How do people get additional vote mail requests that come to our office? Maybe they lost it. We actually had one of those. The lady actually voted a provisional, but once we reviewed her data, she had actually voted vote by mail. So the system catches those type of situations.
And it's the same way if that voter is registered in Sumter County, the system blocks them from registering in Lake County, or vice versa.
Another state.
No, different state. Very good question. Last year, with the urging of our association, the legislature authorized the Secretary of State to join the Electronic Registration Information Consortium. The acronym is ERIC. There's about 28 states that are members of ERIC that share this voter registration data. Right now, our association is trying to make sure the legislature appropriates the money. Secretary of State can actually affect that. It's going to take about probably $1.2 or $3 million to make that happen, but it's certainly well worth it. One of the things that we run into frequently here is folks that retire, come to Florida, register to vote, they're very active in voting, they move back north, they register to vote there, and then they pass away. And for some reason, you know, you just can't imagine why their children didn't think to call us and say, take my mom and dad off the roll, you know. But with the joining ERIC, when they register up there, if that state is a member of ERIC, then they can check our database and say, now make up your mind, where are you going to vote?
Sounds good.
Okay, I have a question.
This lady has the microphone.
I have a question on your 10-day. Okay, now we had a very tough election here in Florida. All right, between for governor and the Senate. All right, now you have a 10-day that you counted at 10 days. Okay, they have 10 days. However, how do you know who won right after the election? And that was a tough one.
You don't know.
Those people from overseas.
Okay, we got the question. There you go.
Republican.
Okay, and ma'am, you have to understand, as supervisors of elections, we care not whether you vote Republican or Democrat. Now, as a Republican, and you bet your boots I care, but as your supervisor of elections, I'm going to look at it vanilla or chocolate. That's all there is to it. And so, but here's the thing. If my son is on a Navy destroyer in the Indian Ocean, and he sends that ballot back to my office, I'm going to give that man or that lady 10 days extra so that the Navy can get that ballot back in my office. And that's why they have the 10 days. They earn it, they deserve it, and they're going to keep it.
Okay, hang on, we're using the mic for the audience, okay? So raise your hand and give the mic.
Okay, I was wondering...
Hold it up to your mouth, please.
Oh, can you hear me now?
You got to kiss the mic.
Do you always... I'm going to direct this to Wesley, because you're my supervisor of elections now.
There you go.
So,
Remember, I'm up for re-election in 2020. I'll bring my petitions back down.
no problem. No problem at all. I've been up to your office up there. I take my ballot right up there. Anyway, my question is this. You mentioned that you check signatures. Do you always check signatures on absentee ballots?
Always.
Okay, here's the thing.
Every single one.
There are individuals whose tremors get worse and they can't sign in cursive anymore. So an occupational therapist at the VA explains that you can print. Will that be a problem?
Not typically. I'll tell you. You know, and that's one of the kind of the enduring myths of this whole process on the vote by mail. And I always get the example of our more seasoned voters that have Parkinson's or some other health ailment where their signature changes over the years. But if you've been a registered voter with me for several years, I've got copies of your signature over however many years you've been doing that. When you send me a vote by mail envelope, I've got an image of that vote by mail envelope. I've got that signature. So I see that progression. You know, the problem and the challenge that we all probably, all three of us up here will face, it's not from our age group where we have signature challenges. It's from the 18 to 25-year-old. I'm being serious and I'm being a little funny here as well. First off, you have to recognize they no longer teach cursive. Okay? Well,
no, they do in Florida.
In the state of Florida, you can pre-register at 16 years of age. When you go get that driver's license, you go over there and you're happy you get to drive home that day, and you block printed your name on this thing, and it's on your driver's license. Well, you know, a driver's license is good for 8 years. So they did that at 16, about 21, 22, they're out in the real world working, 50 hours a week, whatever else. Their block lettering of the heart over the I is no longer there. And so there's a challenge we really face. It's more from that group, where I've only got the one example, maybe the two examples. Our more senior population that votes by mail, that has voted for the last 3 general elections, I've got those signatures and I can show that progression going on, and it's perfectly fine. If for some reason there is ever a challenge with your signature, all 3 of us, we're required to mail you a notification as soon as we discover that challenge, giving you an opportunity to come in and do something about it.
Okay, over
Pretty
here.
thorough answer. We got another question over here.
With regards to 287G, what's the status on the Tri-County area and getting Sumter, Lake, and Marion in the threshold?
Well, as far as I know, they're not on our list of sanctuary counties, so as far as I know, they are honoring 287 GA containers.
Okay.
You can bet Lake County's not going to be a sanctuary county.
Okay, one other question, and we'll get to down here. We can
I heard a rumor that there was a new law that if you have 2 houses, let's say in 2 different states, that you could register in both, and wherever you happen to be during the election, you can vote there. Is that true? And I think that would be a big question for villagers.
Ma'am, I heard Hillary Clinton was going to be our next president, too.
And I'm a French pastor model.
Okay, Hank, we're working on a question right here. Stand up, please.
I was just really upset this last election about the supervisor in Broward County. I wrote to Pam Bondi and said, you got to do something. Well, she eventually started something on it, but then the lady retired. Do you know, is there anything going to be done about her, and what can be done to make sure the next person doesn't do the same thing?
Well, first, you got to consider you're in Broward County. I'm not trying to be funny, but that's the sad truth. But that being said, Governor Scott put Pete Antonacci in charge down there, and Pete will be in charge for the next 2 years. He'll be in charge of the 2020 election. At that point, there will be a new supervisor elected. The same way in Palm Beach County, where Governor DeSantis removed Supervisor Booker, and there will be a new supervisor elected. Folks, you need to understand, and you know, all of us went to school when 94 to 100 was an A, was it not? Well, Florida scored 97% in the 2018 election. It's the Clinton News Network and all the other fake news idiots that made Florida, and a judge in Tallahassee that says Florida's the laughing stock. It's only because of those fools that we're laughing stock. 65 out of 67 counties got it right. That's a 97% year. So we should be proud of the Florida election system.
Time for one more question.
I don't have a question.
Okay.
But I moved to Sumter County and the villages in 2002. And it's been my privilege to work the polls for the last 3 elections in Sumter County. I've never worked polls in any other state. I was busy working. But let me tell you, my faith in the election system has been just dramatically improved as I've watched all of the things that we go through there at the polling place to make sure that we have an honest election. Need volunteers and need people to work the polls, and I would encourage everyone in this room to think about doing that, because it will tremendously increase your respect for our election system.
Thank you, sir. And I add also that 3 weeks ago today, we had an open house at our new facility. We had over 400 people come through that open house. And every one of them expressed that same thing, how amazed they were at the level of security that we exercise, the depth of detail that we pay attention to, and it's a very eye-opening experience. You want to see I opened this to go see this man's place. It is top drawer all the way around.
Any remaining comments or suggestions from the supervisors to wrap up our
I just have one. I don't know if everybody knows this, but Sumter County was #1 in the state for voter turnout in 2000. Over half of our precincts voted over 80%. Has anyone here in the Rohan voted Rohan? Y'all were #1. You had almost 90% turnout of that precinct. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank our supervisors, Alan Hayes, Wesley Wilcox, Philip King, and Jonathan from Washington D.C.
And Mike, thank you for a great job. You guys can take the film on the road, by the way. We're almost done. But you guys can go take the film on the road. We got it. $50 thing coming up. So, Brother Stan, you've also got announcements. So, Stan?
Yes, we just want to bring you up to date. One of our members here, Frank Fitzpatrick, is at a meeting right now. We are trying to organize the 3 villagers for Trump, Republican Federated Women of the Villages, and the Republican Club of the Villages. We're trying to get together, all 3 of us, to do the same thing, a common goal, and that's to get registered Republicans to vote, registered independents as Republicans, and re-elect Donald Trump in 2020. We're also throwing around ideas about putting a half-page ad in the newspaper, having a table at the square so people can register. So we're working on a lot of things, and we'll probably be able to bring you up to date on that at the next meeting. Yes, the 50-50 tonight is $48, 3 of them. $348. $348 price. Number 576719. $907-2688. $576-653.